Few photographers have a legacy quite like Irving Penn. When it comes to the greatest photographers of the 20th century, his name is always high on the list. He had a minimalistic approach to portraiture, often shoving his subjects into a corner or against a simple background to focus the viewer's eye upon the subject. He had an interest in preserving his subjects' individuality with little ornamentation or retouching. His approach was essentially humane and profound. His skills spread out masterfully across a variety of genres, including fashion, portraiture, still lifes, nudes, and found objects. This is the goal of many photographers, to reach that potential to be considered a complete photographer. Born in 1917, Penn began work as a photographer with Vogue magazine in the mid-1940s. Through his command of composition and training in the graphic arts, Penn's photography began to impress his professional circle, and his photos appeared regularly on the covers of Vogue magazine. It was with Vogue that he developed his style of arresting and highly sophisticated aesthetic. Eventually, though, through the years, his photography evolved to feature full-figured portraits with a minimalistic background and moved from being considered working in the fine art photography arena into the conceptual photographic art world. In 1948, Penn traveled to Peru while on assignment with Vogue magazine. He was to document the legendary fashion model Jean Patchett for a week, but ended up staying in Peru for his own assignment. He traveled to Cuzco to capture shots of the indigenous Peruvians, and this would pave the way for his interest in ethnographic photography. His additional stay in Cuzco was a mandatory week since planes seldom traveled to the area, and upon his arrival he experienced altitude sickness for 3 days, staying in his room and bed as he adjusted to his settings. After acclimating to the altitude, he longed to head out and capture shots of the people. He ended up renting a studio in the area, a Victorian-style room owned by a local proprietor. Penn laid down his cash for 3 days and set up a shop there. This happened to be around Christmas time. Though it wasn't a major holiday there, it was a time considered to be Fiesta del Sol, a pagan time of celebration where the market was filled with toys and sweets for the children. Locals and tourists came to the city to trade goods and congregate. Their arrival brought an intriguing mix of intricate and colorful garments. Since he had rented out a local photographer's studio, many people would arrive looking to have their family portraits taken. But instead of finding their usual photographer, they found Penn. This marked the beginning of Irving Penn's study of human culture and its preservation. Instead of paying their local photographer for a family portrait, Penn ended up paying them for their time and experience. Throughout those 3 days, Penn would take around 2,000 exposures. 11 of the negatives were eventually published in Vogue the following year. These sessions saw Penn photographing children dressed for travel, country folk in their work clothes, men wearing local fiesta masks, and more. Penn treated his subjects like any celebrity or VIP that had crossed his camera before in New York. Though the clothing was a departure from Vogue's high culture and fashionable sense, his subjects were posed with the same poise and dignity that could be found in the magazine's pages featuring glamorous models. Penn had an ability to demonstrate the culture of a people through what they wore, while also presenting their originality through facial expressions and posture. Perhaps the most endearing out of this set, and arguably the most famous portrait of all, would be the Cuzco Children. It is the portrait of an Indian boy and girl taken in an antiquated studio. They are barefoot, wearing little floppy hats with their hands rested atop a tripod table. They bear the same poise and respect as any celebrity, cultural icon, or fashion model that would be photographed in New York. With their traditional clothing and solemn expressions, the children presented a culture and way of life that was endured for centuries. Penn's photograph has become an emblem of Peruvian culture and a symbol of the enduring spirit of indigenous peoples around the world. Through his artistry, Penn has given voice to the unrecognized or forgotten, reminding us of the rich diversity of our world and the importance of preserving cultural heritage. There are no other distractions in these photos. Penn's use of a simple backdrop was an ingenious tactic meant to limit the viewer's attention to the subject on display. They are bathed in ethereal, soft light, offset by the solidity of the wet stone floor. Penn would go on to transform these photos into works of art by his experiments with platinum printing. The prints are made by placing the negative and emulsion-coated paper in direct contact with each other, resulting in warm, rusty hues. He would go on to apply chemicals directly to the image with a brush, resulting in a tonal, rich work of art. His time in Cuzco inspired him to further travel around the world. He photographed models in Japan, Crete, Spain, New Guinea, etc. While photographing abroad, he began focusing on photographing his subjects using natural light, surrounded by textiles indicative of the country they were in. Penn's ability to capture the essence of his subjects was truly unparalleled. Through his lens, he revealed the beauty and complexity of the human form, creating images that were at once timeless and utterly contemporary. He brought a unique perspective to his work, always seeking to push the boundaries of what was possible and to challenge the conventions of the medium. But beyond his incredible talent as a photographer, Penn will be remembered for his passion and his unwavering commitment to his craft. He lived a life dedicated to the pursuit of beauty and the celebration of the human spirit. His work touched the hearts of millions, and his influence will continue to be felt for years to come.